And show my screen. Audience view. Yep, wrong view. Show my screen. Okay. Sorry, guys, for getting a late start. Can you hear me? Can they hear me?
Yeah, looking good.
Okay. I know you can hear me. I don't know if they can hear me or not.
Oh, yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, good deal. Okay. Sorry about the late start. I had some computer issues, and hopefully it won't affect it through the rest of the presentation, because we've got a great presentation today. Brent Ozar for our April presentation, and he'll be speaking about maybe something that I needed to look at this morning, triaging SQL Server emergencies. In this case, it wasn't SQL servers, but anyway, very helpful for every DBA. Now, let me get started. One thing that I have to, well, let's see. The first spot is we have Kevin Klein here from our SentryOne, our sponsor, and I want to let him talk for just a second. I'm a little rattled, okay?
Well, Steve, I understand. Folks, thanks so much for attending. You are in for a real treat today. Brent Ozar, one of the foremost speakers of our industry and just a great presenter.
I'll give you 15 minutes to stop that.
Yes, exactly. And so Brent and I are old buddies, and I just can't praise him enough for his quality investment in the community.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Just a quick word about SentryOne. We have, and I'm not touching the slides or anything, so Steve, I'll leave it to you to advance to the next slide. Just want to thank you for coming, and also want to encourage everyone to get to know SentryOne. We have some fantastic community-oriented websites. For example, we have SQLperformance.com for high-quality blog posts about how to tune your SQL servers. We also have a website called answers.SQLperformance.com, where we will help with query tuning questions. And the other thing, just to make sure that everybody knows, we have a very, very popular product called Plan Explorer for tuning queries. And it makes tuning queries so much easier than if you did not have the product. Now, it's so popular that I run into a lot of people who have already downloaded the product, but I want to encourage those of you who have the product right now to actually go and download it again. We just had a new release late last year that includes a lot of extra features, and so you're missing out if you have not got a recent edition of Plan Explorer. On top of that, it's so free that we don't even take an email address. So never fear, there's not going to be any salespeople calling you and harassing you or anything like that. Just get the product, download it, and enjoy it when you're doing query tuning in the future. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through the news. The big news is we have a discount code, and the bad news is I sent out the wrong one yesterday. So, and if you tried it, you probably found out that it wouldn't work. So here is our correct code. If you want to do select the camera up at the top right-hand side of your screen and copy that to your desktop, because we're going to be giving away, well, I'll get it back in a second, $300 Amazon gift card drawn from a pool of people that use our discount code. And it may go up because we get more money if there's new people that sign up. So be sure and say if you're a first timer to the Pass Summit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead real quickly. I want to get to Brent. Pass has lots of virtual groups, and they probably run a lot better than I did this morning. Virtual group meetings. I'm going to talk about one that's coming up. Kevin, let me back up. Kevin agreed to fill in for us at the last minute, so I think this is going to be a really excellent session, how to assess technical quality of apps running on Microsoft SQL Server. When I first looked at it, I said, I'm not sure about that. And then when I watched it, because you're able to evaluate other people's code, but you can use it to evaluate your own code and look, and it's got great standards and things. It's a great teaching tool. Okay. more sessions. One thing that I wanted to mention, since Brent's on here today, there's another SQL education thing that's in our industry nowadays, and we're all about sharing. Groupbuy.org is something that Brent started, and I'll let him talk about it just a second about when he gets started. But it's a great opportunity for the community, and one of the things that's great about this community is they share. And this was a brainchild of Brent's to kind of get the community as a whole to be able to vote on sessions and have sessions. And they've got some coming up, 421. You get to vote on the sessions and get the ones you want, and you get to watch some great sessions. So check that out. Women in Technology's got one coming up in June, Jess Borland, great one. SQL Saturday this weekend. And PowerShell, this is one that I really want to see myself. And that's tomorrow with the PowerShell group. They're going to be automating Glenn Berry's DMV scripts with PowerShell. I want to see that. 24 Hours of Passes coming up May 3rd, 4th. Upcoming SQL Saturdays, you can find that at SQLSaturday.com. Our session recordings will be here, and here's our discount code. Let me turn it over to Brent. Okay, let me make you a presenter, Brent. And since I got a late start, we've got to make sure that Brent's stuff looks good. It should. But we'll see. Brent Ozar, make presenter. Here you go. Hello?
For some reason it muted me too. Muted me. Let me go throw VMware up and off we go. All right, so hi everybody, I'm Brent Ozar. I'm a Microsoft Certified Master and I just do all kinds of crazy stuff with SQL Server. And in this session I'm going to be talking about how to triage SQL Server emergencies. I do this a lot. This is kind of my full-time job at this point is people come running in with a totally broken or on-fire SQL Server, and I've got to fix it in a matter of just a few days. So what me and the team have done is built a bunch of open source scripts, SP Blitz, SP Blitz First, all kinds of stuff. You're going to see me demoing some of those plus other community toolset stuff while I'm walking through today's session. When you're a database administrator or a systems administrator or developer, a big piece of your work is mentoring other people. You don't want to do the same job for the rest of your life. You want to be able to grow and move forward, and a big part of that is documenting what you do so you can hand it off to somebody else. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of emergencies and have always had when I work with SQL Server. The most common problem that I ran into was somebody would run into my cubicle and go, "Are you doing anything on the SQL Server right now?" And as soon as you hear that, you know, there goes your afternoon. Like that's going to be what you're doing for the next, hour or so. And we tend to run around and madly and just poke our hands in stuff. There is a better way. And the better way, I'm going to use an example of an emergency room at a hospital because it's weird. It turns out that like all my family's in medicine. I don't know how this happened. Everybody else ended up working emergency rooms, pediatricians, hospice care. I'm the only one who didn't go into medicine. So I learned over time, working through the rest of my family, talking to them about emergency rooms, and eventually going into emergency rooms myself by accident, is that there's a person at the front of the emergency room called a triage nurse. This triage nurse's job is to figure out which doctor you should see as quickly as possible. Like, should you go straight into the operating room, or maybe should you sit back for a minute?
Brent, you self-muted somehow.
I'm not touching it, so somebody's over there playing around. I heard voices. Well, we'll keep going from here.
Okay.
So
I think it was about 30 seconds.
Okay, cool. So a triage nurse's job is to figure out which one of these levels you're in. Level 1, the patient is dead and we have to try to resuscitate them right now. Level 2, the patient is likely to die whether or not they receive medical help. Level 3, the patient will live, but only if we help them right now. And then level 4, the patient will live regardless of whether or not we help them. I'm so glad I'm not in medicine when I look at stuff like this, because this is horrifying to me. My knees get weak and I pass out when I see blood. I really like computer work instead. So here's the triage levels that I've come up with over the years for SQL Server. When someone comes running into my cubicle and says, Brent, the server's down and not responding to queries, I react very differently to that one than I do the below levels. Level 2, the server's going to go down in minutes. Level 3, the server's in bad shape, but it's going to survive even if I don't lift a finger. Level 4, some parts of some applications are unusually slow. And then level 5, Bob's report is running unusually slow. And it even may be regularly slow. It's just that today is the day that Bob's decided, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I need some kind of way to figure out which level I'm at, because at level 1 and level 2, I am comfortable walking in and doing things I've never done before. It almost sounds kind of backwards, but how much worse are you going to make it? If the server's down, you might be comfortable trying things that you've never tried before, trying strange, unusual trace flags or SP configure settings, because how much worse can it get? But at lower levels, at level 3, 4, and 5, I don't really want to change things. I really don't want to put in a trace flag in production. I don't want to do something that might cause permanent harm, because change equals risk. Those two things are exactly the same. Change equals risk. Whenever you change a SQL Server, you are gambling. Sometimes it's a 100% sure bet, but sometimes it's not quite as sure of a bet. And sometimes I'm just not going to do anything at all in production. I'm not going to ignore Bob. I just have to set priorities right so that Bob understands there are bigger problems than him. There are other problems that I have to go take care of. So whenever I'm mentoring DBAs and I'm getting them to walk through that triage checklist, I actually have them print out this screen and put it on their cubicle wall. This is what I want to step through whenever an emergency strikes, and you're going to see me step through several of these live emergencies on my SQL Server. First, what are the symptoms? What are the things that end users are complaining about? Second, what do I believe the root cause is? I may be wrong, but what do I believe that it is right now? Third, if I don't do anything, if I go out and have a beer, what's the effect going to be? Is the server going to be just fine, or is it going to get worse? Is there something that's going to break? And then based on those three things, that's what I prioritize taking action on. What should I do right now in production? Or what should I maybe try over in development first? Or should I just put it in my, say, performance tuning queue in order to work on it later? To fill this out, these are the exact 6 tools that I use in order every time. Monitoring software, who is active, Blitz first, Blitz cache, Blitz index, and Blitz. You're going to see me stepping through these, and I want to have some kind of repeatable tool methodology that I walk through instead of herpa-derping around and just clicking randomly through Task Manager. I'm going to start with level 1. I'm not going to show anybody's monitoring software. The session's sponsored by SQL Sentry. That has nothing to do with me. I do believe in their stuff. There's monitoring tools I recommend all the time. Theirs is one of them. And I used to think, before I was a Microsoft Certified Master, I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way that masters are going to roll their, use somebody's off-the-shelf tools. They're going to go build their own. Screw that. I'm not a developer. I'm not going to build good monitoring software. I'm a huge fan of getting monitoring software off the shelf, but I need to understand what it does and what it doesn't do. Does monitoring systems tell you what the symptoms are? Yes, sort of. If you open up the dashboard, they'll have all kinds of red, yellow, and green lights. It looks like some kind of Christmas tree on fire inside there. Does it tell you what the root cause is? That gets a little trickier. Often they'll tell you that your storage is on fire, but they don't necessarily get it right down to the individual query level. This is the query that's causing your storage problems. or you have to be an expert user of the tool to get to exactly the root cause there. Does it tell you what's going to take action if you, what's going to happen if you don't take action? This is where things start to fall apart. They don't give you that level of specifics. And then do they tell you what action you should take? Actually, yes, they'll tell you all kinds of things. You should create this index, you should change this SP configure setting, you should tune this query. But they don't tie all of this together into, we're having an emergency right now, here's exactly what you should do. Monitoring software is a whole lot like the flatline emergency monitoring system in hospitals. When you go into an operating room, you hear these alerts, but you don't see all of the surgeons gathered around the heart rate monitor going, all right, what do you think we should do next? What does Clippy say? No, these things are in the background. They are there as a backup for the surgeons to tell you when you need to change tacks. They tell you when the patient is about to die, but they don't teach you or coach you through performance tuning. Today's monitoring software is that backup. It is not a replacement for your practices and your analytics. It's a tool that you use to achieve those things. So you want baselines based on what day of month it is, what day of week, what time of the year it is, and you only want alerts whenever your monitoring goes outside or whenever your numbers go outside of a certain threshold. Let me give you an example. Say that your CPU is 65% busy right now on the SQL Server. Do you want an email or not? What if I told you that normally at this time, CPU is only 10 to 15%? Then all of a sudden things look different. But what if I told you that this is normally the time of month or quarter when your accounting people close the books? Oh, God. Well, yeah, CPU is a little higher, and the monitoring software doesn't exactly know which day of month or day of quarter we close our books at. And even if it did, then it has to correlate that threshold down to what's normal for that business processing time. Let's take another example. Say the CPU is 65% busy and it's not month ending. Normally at this time, CPU is only 10 to 15%, but it's because batch requests per second, the number of queries that your SQL Server is handling, is 10 times higher than it usually is. Do you want an email? What do you want the email to be on, and who should get that email? I'm not the one running the queries. I want my developers. I want my architects to get an email saying you're sending 10 times more queries than you ever have to SQL Server. Sure, I have to fix it. I have to do something about handling the performance. DBA equals default blame acceptor. So I'm going to have to work on it, but I don't want to be the only one being involved. This is really hard technology. Your numbers are changing all the time. You're doing SP configure settings. You're adding indexes, deploying new versions of code. You can't keep up, and neither can your monitoring software. So monitoring software, while I love it, I need you to understand that it's really focused on two things. It's focused on emailing you when something is on fire, or it's useful as a dashboard to let you jump back through time and look at what metrics looked like or specific query plans looked like over time. I really only want an alert from this thing when the thing is absolutely on fire. Tell me when people can't log in. Don't email me just because the SQL Server is slow, because my users may not care. I have a really controversial view on monitoring software. The only alerts I want is whenever the thing is broken, is down. Don't tell me that queries are taking 30 seconds or 60 seconds longer. I have an incredibly finely tuned performance monitoring system that will tell me that. It's called my end users. My end users will call me whenever there's any kind of blip on the SQL Server. Yep. So what I want to do next is, after I get an email, either from my monitoring software or from my end users telling me that there's a problem, then I'm going to jump in and take action. You are not going to see me jump in and take action on the monitoring software. I love it. I have to have it. It's fantastic. But whenever there's an urgent problem, I'm actually going to jump directly into the SQL Server because I don't even want a second of delay, and there's something very important and specific that I'm looking for. The first tool that you're going to see me use is Atom Mechanics SP Whoisactive. It's totally free. You can go download it from whoisactive.com, and it's a great replacement for SP Who and SP Who2. It's not a replacement for Activity Monitor. I'm going to show you something else that's a replacement for that in a second. But I'm just going to run SP Whoisactive whenever I'm having a performance emergency as my first step. Let me go show you how it works. Now I have a SQL Server here. I've got a SQL Server 2016, but everything that I'm going to show you works on 2008 forward. All currently supported versions of SQL Server, all the stuff in today's session will work on. And I got to put my SQL Server under a performance emergency, so I'm going to use a totally free open source tool in order to do it. This open source tool is called SQL Query Stress. Stress testing your SQL Server is outside of the scope of what I'm going to talk about today. But if that kind of thing interests you, search for SQL Query Stress and no spaces, and throw my name in there as well. I've got a blog post describing the stress test tool that I'm about to show you. So let's go fire this boy up, and I'm going to go throw my SQL Server under a tremendous amount of stress. Go. So my users just call me, Brent, there's some kind of performance emergency. Things are going badly. Can you go run and check, see what's going on? The first thing that I'm going to go do is run SP Whoisactive. I'm not going to run it with any parameters. I'm just going to run it. And I'm going to do something that sounds kind of unprofessional. I'm just going to run it a few times and see what I see. Now here, in this example, the way that SP Whoisactive works is it shows you the queries from the longest running to the shortest running. In here, I have a query that's been running for 45 minutes. Then I have a few that have been running for a couple dozen seconds. I'm just executing to see, are queries getting through or not? And it looks like they're taking longer and longer. It's tempting to go look at the SQL text and start analyzing what the queries are. Ignore that. That's just something for performance tuning. This is not the problems you're looking for. What I want to go look at is, what are my queries waiting on? And here, the big thing that I'm looking for is there a blocking firestorm? Is there one query that's blocking a whole bunch of other queries? And in this example, the wait info column tells me what my queries are waiting on. You don't have to be any kind of a super SQL Server scientist to see that LCK means locking. Queries are waiting for locks. If I drill a little further down into the blocking session column, it shows me that this query is being blocked by number 58. Our query IDs, the SPIDs, are over here. 58 is right here. He's my lead blocker. No one is blocking him, and he's not waiting on anything. Dan, the developer, come on, man. I have told you to stop querying production. I don't want queries running against production during daytime hours. Now I can start to see a little bit more about what's going on. In this example, I can see that Dan had started a transaction. So if I click on it, I can see Dan's exact query. I don't see all the queries Dan ran to get to this point. I only see his most recent one, which will come in very important here in a moment. It's very tempting to say, I'm going to go kill whoever the lead blocker is. Hold up. There's a giant problem with that. Let's go into a little bit more details here. So let's pop back over to the presentation and tell you what I'm looking for. So when I run this guy, if SP Whoisactive doesn't run at all, if it won't even execute, or if I can't connect to the SQL Server, I may be facing much larger problems like the server's already dead. We have a separate first responder kit for that, and it includes a Word document that you can go through and edit. I want to give this to my team members so that anytime we're troubleshooting a broken SQL Server, we all approach it exactly the same way. It's got blanks for where you run specific queries and you put in your notes. This is magical when someone calls me at 10 p.m. on a Friday and I'm drunk out of my mind going, because I get drunk early. I'm drunk out of my mind at 10 p.m. and I'm like, what do you mean the production server's down? Can you send me the kit? And then I can see at least the first responder kit, depending on how drunk I am. I may see multiple copies of it. And then I can start to absorb some of those results instead of someone screaming in a panic, CPU is high and I don't know what's going on. This queue length is high, but then page life expectancy is low. What should I do? Then if I can read through this stuff, I have a little bit of an easier time while I'm getting to the taxi to go home. If there's no rows in SP who is active's output, then I may have a different kind of outage problem. Maybe my app servers can't get to the SQL Server, like there's a broken availability groups listener. Drilling a little further, how long have queries been running, and is anybody being blocked right now? It's so tempting to go in and kill the lead blocker, but the big problem here is that when you roll work forward in SQL Server, if you run a big update or a delete, rolling work forward, you can use multiple threads. When you do a rollback, rollbacks are single-threaded. So I can get into a scenario where 8 cores have been working for an hour in order to roll some statement forward, but when I kill it, it takes 8 hours or more in order to roll that work back. I don't want to do that. I don't want to get caught in that kind of thing where I've killed somebody's SQL Server query and I'm the one now who's broken something. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just figure out what I believe the root cause is. Then I'm going to go through and figure out where I'm at on this triage and start filling this form out. Here, when I have a blocking firestorm, this SQL Server is going down. Because the moment that someone does a begin tran, they are going to start growing my transaction log when I run out of space. Once I fill up my transaction log, SQL Server is going to continue to keep that stuff in the log even when I'm doing log backups, even when my database is in simple recovery mode, because I have to be able to get back to the log point wherever someone started that transaction and undo their work. I'm on a ticking time bomb here. I don't want to figure this out when I completely run out of disk space. So here's where we fill out our little form that we tore down from the wall. First, the symptoms are a frozen website and query timeouts. I believe that the root cause is a blocking chain led by Dan the developer. If I don't take action now, I can run out of drive space due to the log file running out, and my website is not going to heal itself. Things will continue to be blocked. Based on this, I recommend that we kill Dan's query, possibly even take Dan out back and have a nice polite discussion with him. And then I'm also a big fan of putting this in the help desk queue. I confess, kind of a jerk. When they say DBA, when they say Brent is the DBA, Brent has an amazing propensity to make everyone know exactly whose fault it is when they broke something. I'm all about forgiveness. I want to be nice to people, but that doesn't mean you need to be sysadmin on the production SQL Server. If I can't trust you not to start transactions or do something that's going to take the SQL Server down, I am going to make sure that everyone knows exactly what went wrong. Plus, I'm now in an ugly spot because if I'm going to kill that query, I am putting myself on the line, saying that I'm the one who's going to take responsibility for how long it takes to roll back. And I may not know. Check this out. So back over in my SQL Server here, I'm running SP who is active, and it shows that Dan's query has been running for 52 minutes, and I've got a bunch of other queries that are being blocked. Right now, I can click on Dan's query and see exactly what he did. Typically, the lead blocker is at the top, and you can see the query that they ran in order to get there, but not always. Watch this. I just happen to have Dan's window over here in the background where he executed his begin tran. He just forgot to put in a commit. So what Dan's going to do here is he's going to say select get date. Dan's query doesn't commit his transaction. He still has his logs taken out over on the users table, But now that I've done select get date, let's switch back over to SP who is active and run it again. And you'll see that Dan's query is now at the bottom of the list. This time counter from SP who is active is only since their last query. When you look at this, it's easy to go, wait a minute, Dan, he's only done a select get date. How is it possible that he's holding locks that other people need? And he's only been running it for 14 seconds. How could he possibly be blocking someone who's been active for 8 minutes? It's because that's his last query. And I don't get a way to see all of Dan's queries that ran up to that point. It may be very tempting to just say, it's a select get date. I can kill that. It'll return immediately. Not necessarily. This is where SP who is active's other parameters come in. It's got all kinds of really awesome parameters for query tuning, but the one that I'm going to use during emergencies is get locks equals 1. Get locks equals 1 does a little bit more work and it returns more results. You'll notice that it added this locks column over here on the right hand side. Here's Dan's query and here's the locks that he has. I'm going to go click on that and I get this little XML window that shows me all the locks he has. In a real world huge stored procedure type thing, you're going to see dozens of tables or hundreds of tables that have all been blocked or locked by this guy. In this simplistic example, I'm showing you that he has a lock on the users table, and that lock is an exclusive lock. No one else can touch it. This is the only clue that I've got about how widespread Dan's work is. If Dan took an exclusive lock across 50 tables, it's time to hold up. I got to think really hard about how long his rollback's going to take. This is also the kind of time where I may get this escalated up to the security team. If we can't not to kill Dan, obviously they would love to do that. Security guys seem to love that kind of thing. But instead, what I'm going to say is, look, we can't get a hold of Dan. He's taken down the production SQL server. Can you, the security team, reset his password and then walk over to his workstation with me? You go unlock it and let's see what he was doing. You can have architects, whoever else you want involved on the call. As I'm looking at SP who is active's results, I can scroll across to the right-hand side and it shows me what host name his queries are coming from. This is doable when I'm inside SSMS. When I'm talking about an application running as a service, this is much tougher. What I may tell people to do is go restart whatever that application server is, because I'd much rather have you be the one on the hook for the blocking or for the rollback instead of me. But if all else fails and I have to kill Dan's query, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a couple of windows here and I'm going to come back to something. I need to kill Dan's query. Dan is SPID number 58. But I'm going to do something and I'm on a super fast server, so I'm going to have to start another window to show something, but I'm going to come back to it here in a second. I'll explain what this command is. But first, I'm going to do this, then this, and I'm going to come back to that guy here in a second. So I've killed Dan's query, and now I run SP who is active again. Dan is still blocking other people. These other people are still waiting on locks. They are still blocked by Dan. Dan's query, as I scroll across, is in the state of a rollback, but the locks will continue until morale improves. No, until his rollback finishes. Whenever his rollback finishes, it will release the locks and other people can go forward. You'll see over in SP who is active, it has this %complete column, which you really, really want bad, and you can't have it. That works for backups and restores. It does not work for things like rollbacks. So people will come in and go, where are we at with the rollback? Why is this thing taking so long? And the way that you get an answer to that is this other query that I ran and hid away from you there for a second. After I start the kill, I can go run kill 58 with status only. And this shows two things, a percentage of completion and an estimated time remaining. Both of them are kind of wacko. You'll see percentage going forward. It's just that sometimes you'll see it stuck at 99% for minutes. It's like the Windows file copy guy wrote it, if you know who I'm talking about. And the estimated time remaining, you'll see jump all over the place as well, because it's based on how much work is active right now on your SQL server. It's better than nothing, though. I can at least give this to the team and explain that. Here's how wacko the estimates are. Just know that we are making progress forward, or we're not, and we're completely screwed. And I can continue to run this with status only. What you might be worried about is that someone else is going to step into that SPID and then suddenly get killed. That's not how with status only works. With status only, we'll only give you the status if that thing is in the process of rolling back. For example, if I take another SPID, say 60, if he's not in a rollback, it'll tell me rollback is not in progress. So it's totally safe to keep running and checking the status of this guy. So now we're past the first level. If I don't see a huge blocking chain in SP who is active, and SP who is active works just fine, I'm past level 1 and level 2. Now I need to move down to levels 3 through 5. The next tool that I'm going to run is SP Blitz first. And I recognize the irony in telling you something that's named first, and it's not the actual stored procedure that I run first. I have ambitions that one day this will be the first stored procedure that I run to triage an emergency. It's not there yet. It has a lot of cool stuff. It just doesn't have everything that I want around blocking chains yet. What I'm going to do in order to run this is I'm just going to run it without any parameters. Just show me what's going on this SQL server. So let's go see how this guy works. Now I'm also going to go over to my buddy Dan's window, and I'm going to have him do something else just so that I can trigger some other ugly kind of activity inside here. There we go. Go. So now SP who is active runs. Let's go show how that guy works. SP who is active runs, and it doesn't show a blocking chain. It ain't fast. Well, there is some blocking going on, as it turns out, over in probably TempDB here for page latch. There is some blocking going on. Let's execute and see. As a matter of fact, it would be funny if it, oh yeah, I have different problems over in there. But let's run SP Blitz first. Now what SP Blitz first does is it takes a snapshot of a bunch of your DMVs, waits for 5 seconds, then takes another snapshot and compares what was different between these two snapshots to identify weird things that might be going on. It gives you a prioritized list, just like SP Blitz does. It gives you a prioritized list of, for example, high CPU utilization. Right now, our CPU utilization is running 80%. I want to get warned whenever it's SQL Server that's using a lot of CPU, but I don't want to remote desktop in and go look at Task Manager. We can just go in and look here with SP Blitz first and see what kind of metrics we're looking at. I can also see things like my wait stats and the number of batch requests per second that I'm doing. If I want to get even, and what I'll end up doing is just running this a few times to just see, is there anything unusual happening on my SQL server right now? And it flags all kinds of interesting stuff. I'm going to pop back over to the PowerPoint to give you a list of some of the things that it'll show you here. So it'll show you if there's a backup running right now, a long-running SQL agent job, if you have a data file that's growing or a log file that's growing. These are blocking operations that will slow everything else down. It'll show you if the plan cache was erased recently, if you have a high number of errors per second, if Hackathon is doing garbage collection, all kinds of stuff that it'll warn you about. And because it's prioritized, it helps me figure out which level I'm at based on the warnings that I get. For example, let's say that the symptoms are the same. It's a frozen website and query timeouts, and the root cause is a surprise backup that's being run right now or a CheckDB that's being run right now. If I don't take action on it right now, the server will heal itself after another, say, 30 minutes. Based on that, I recommend that we put this in the help desk's queue to coordinate between Dan, the developer who's doing the backups, and anybody who's complaining about query performance. SP Blitz First has a whole bunch of other cool parameters too. I'm going to show you one other one, expert mode. Now, expert mode doesn't do more work, it just returns more data back to you. The first set of data that it returns is a list of what queries are running right now. It's kind of like SP Who is Active, but it goes into more details for those of us who like query tuning. For example, what's the cost of the query that's running right now? What's my memory usage? What degree of parallelism am I running under if this query is going big, wide parallel? How much memory have I been granted going across? What my isolation level is, when my request started, all kinds of other stuff that's useful to me for query tuning. Then it produces the same headline news result set, the prioritized stuff. But if I go down even further, I get more information about wait times and storage. Like I can see which files I've been reading and writing to and how fast they're responding. All of SQL Server's perfmon counters that changed during this sample, all kinds of really cool stuff. You can even write this to a table. You can say, there's a parameter in here for output database name equals, say, I call mine DBA tools. Output schema name equals DBO. Output table name equals Blitz First results. So what this will do is it'll write SP Blitz First data to a table. You can run this every 5 minutes in an agent job if you want. Then, if you want to know why SQL Server was slow yesterday, you can jump back in time using the as of parameter. And you can pass in a date time in there. Then you'll see what was going on the SQL Server back at that time. It can only use as of if you were actually writing these results every 5 minutes. And a lot of people have been setting this up in an agent job every 5 minutes, then just truncating the table results, say, once a week. All of the stuff I showed you in expert mode, perfmon counters, wait stats, file stats, can all be written into tables. Check out the documentation on SP Blitz First if you want to kind of roll your own wait stats chronology over time. So that SP Blitz First typically gets me past around level 3. At this point, I know that the entire server's probably okay. If SP Blitz First didn't return any big rampant warnings, then the next level down is SP Blitz Cache. SP Blitz Cache looks at your plan cache to see what have been the most resource-intensive queries lately. Your SQL Server doesn't even have to be under load. You can go back and just see over the last, say, day, what have been my most expensive queries. Let's go see how this guy works. So if I pop back over into SSMS, and I'm even going to stop my load test, and because I'm terrible about running load test utilities, and because it's open source, so when it breaks, you get to keep both pieces. I'm going to force this thing to kill and then make sure I kill all my other queries that are running. Kill, oh, Dan is still running his CheckDB back there. Stop that, Dan. We don't need you to do that. Kill 62, 62, kill 66, kill 64, kill 60. Watch Brent kill queries, Brent's new hit session. Oh, so one of the cool things about SQL Query Stress, even when it's headless, even when the query itself isn't running, sometimes the guy runs in the background. No, it looks like we're okay there. Doesn't look like he's still going. Whew, just to look at CPU there, just to sort by that, just in case he's, nope, just Windows Server NT. Windows, oh, good times. Okay, good, there he goes. So now let's run SP Blitz Cache. With SP Blitz Cache, what it does take a few seconds, because it is CPU intensive, but it's single threaded. This isn't going to block anyone else. It's not going to knock the server down, but it does a lot of plan cache analysis that does run single threaded. So it's not unusual when you have really heinous queries for this thing to take 30, 60, 90 seconds in order to execute. Don't panic. It's totally safe. I run this in production boxes all over the world. So it gives me the top 10 most resource-intensive queries that have run lately. If you want to see what lately means, you can scroll across, and there's a created at column. This is when your plan cache was kind of cleared out for these particular queries. Maybe you're doing index rebuilds all over the place. Maybe someone ran DBCC free proc cache like that moron presenter, whoever does those things live. It also shows you the last execution, because maybe you've got some nightly jobs that run. Backups are a great example, and CheckDB. Often you'll see those in this list, and you don't want to bother tuning those because they only run at night when end users don't really care about performance issues. So when I take that into account and I look at my top 10, it's really tricky to go you immediately want to dive in and go, oh, let me look at that query text. That's really only kind of a placeholder to show you which query you're working with. Don't dig deeper into it that way. Just see if you recognize the query. Then look over at this column. It shows you the stored procedure or function name. If it's a statement, just like something we're calling one off, like my buddy there, Dan the developer, that did his update. Also, if it's a statement inside a procedure or function. Shows you this kind of parent-child hierarchy, plus all kinds of warnings about the query. Does it have parameter sniffing issues? Has it been running for a long time? Is it missing a bunch of indexes? Because SSMS only shows you the first missing index in a query plan. You could have multiple. It's up to you to go view that execution plan XML to see more details. This SP Blitz cache has all kinds of parameters too that'll give me like the top 10 most resource intensive queries by CPUs or by reads or by duration. And when I'm in an emergency, when someone's coming running in and going, oh my God, it just seems like the SQL Server's so much slower, I have no idea what's going on. Look at this list and see, are these the usual suspects? Are these the queries that are usually at the top of the, it's not a leaderboard really, I call this the sucker board because it's the 10 queries that sucked the most. Do the 10 queries on the sucker board, are those the ones that are usually the 10 queries that suck the most resources? If not, maybe I have a parameter sniffing issue. Maybe one query just got a bad execution plan. This is where people often restart the whole SQL Server, or they'll blow the plan cache, or they'll rebuild indexes or update statistics, and then they'll try the same query and go, oh my God, it's so much faster now. What happened? I guess I should probably reboot SQL Server every week. You just had one query get a bad plan, and it's burning up a ton of CPU. In this case, that one query is responsible for something like 98% of the workload on this SQL Server CPU power. I just need a targeted strike to get that one query out of the plan cache and nothing else. Here's how I do it. I'm going to run SP Blitz cache with expert mode equals on, or 1. When I run it with expert mode equals 1, it gives me more results. What I'm going to do is take that one that sucked really bad, get comments details, and I'm going to scroll all the way over to the right. And when I go all the way over to the right, I get a DBCC free proc cache command that will just kill that one query out of the plan cache. I don't have to nuke the whole query or the whole plan cache. I don't have to recompile an entire table. If it's an ad hoc object, it doesn't have to be a stored procedure. So I can copy just this one out and free this one plan from the cache. But before you do, when you're facing a parameter sniffing emergency, there's one step you need to do first. You need to save this plan so that you know why performance is bad. You're not going to fix it during the emergency. What I do is scroll across here. There's a link here for the query plan itself. You can click on this, and here's the stored procedure and the queries that are in it so that I can see, aha, here's the thing I need to go tune. In this query plan, it's also going to give you the parameters that were used, in this case for this stored procedure. If I go dig a little bit deeper into the execution plan, I can see stuff like the parameter list. So I can get the parameter that caused me this bad plan. So once I save this thing to disk, I'm just going to hit File, Save As, query with bad execution plan.SQL plan. So I've saved that now. Now I can go back over to SP Blitz cache and just free that one plan from the cache. Then I can turn to the end users and say, can you check and see how things are doing right now? Any queries that are already in flight with that execution plan will continue to keep running. But any new queries that come in from this point forward will get a new execution plan based on the first set of parameters that come in. I'm wild about SP Blitz Cache. It has all kinds of really cool parameters. I'll leave you that to go read in the documentation. I've done entire webcasts just about SP Blitz Cache. But the idea here is to see if it's an unusual query at the top of the sucker board, try nuking just that one plan out of cache. If that solves the emergency, then you go, all right, I found the query that's vulnerable to parameter sniffing. I'm going to put this in a help desk ticket or a GitHub issue, whatever it is that we use to track stuff, and I'm going to put this in my performance tuning queue to make it less susceptible to parameter sniffing issues. I'm not rewriting this thing on the fly. I want to make sure I make it better. I can often make stuff like this worse. Remember, I'm down at level like 3 or 4. Then the last performance-related stored procedure I'm going to run is SP Blitz Index. SP Blitz Index is more about long-term design. Do I have the right indexes on my tables? There have been times in my life where I've added an index live in production in order to fix an issue. But that's usually only when the server is at like level 1 or level 2 or level 2 or level 3, not when just someone is complaining because the queries against the sales table are running slower. When I have that kind of performance emergency, I'm going to go take my time digging through index design issues. That's going to take a while. I want to do that over in development first. Finally, there's one last stored procedure that I'm going to run anytime that I touch a SQL Server. Anytime I touch a SQL Server, I want to run SP Blitz. It's a totally free health check for SQL Server and gives you back a prioritized list of reasons of why you can get fired. No DBA gets fired for a slow SQL Server. Believe it or not, that's actually a reason to get you more resources and more training. When you can't figure out why the SQL Server is slow, that's when the boss starts to open up the purse strings. What you get fired for is losing data. That's what I'm mostly worried about with SP Blitz. If I run SP Blitz, it goes through and gives me a prioritized 1 through 255 list of things that are broken on my SQL Server. Not just performance issues, but databases that haven't been backed up, databases with corruption in the last 30 days, memory dumps, misconfigured licensing and affinity masking, all kinds of stuff. It's always intimidating when you first go run this for the first time, but just go copy the URL, copy that out into a web browser, and go understand in more details. For example, as I page down through here, I'm backing up to the same place where my databases live. I haven't done backups on a lot of my databases. I haven't done CheckDB in over 2 weeks. Query store is disabled. I have too much free memory, which sounds good until you start to drill into the reasons why, like memory grants. Now, SP Blitz is not an emergency tool. This is more of a long-term diagnostic tool to just see, is there a reason why I might get fired if this SQL Server loses data? So to recap how you're going to go handle SQL Server triages, your whole goal fills around how do I fill out what the symptoms are, what do I think the root cause is, what's going to happen if I don't take action, and then based on that, what action should I go and take? These are exactly the tools that I use in order: monitoring software, who is active, Blitz first, Blitz cache, Blitz index, and Blitz. When you work through this, you will find the root cause of your performance issues and make that thing go away. If you want more information about these, because all of them have a ton of parameters and all kinds of advanced stuff that they can do, go to brentozar.com and click Tools up at the top. There's pages for each one of these, including Who is Active. Who is Active isn't mine, it's Adam Mechanics, but I'm just such a huge believer in it that we have all kinds of resources on like how to log it to a table, for example. All right, we're beautiful on timing. Let's go see what we got in terms of questions. Steven says, hey Brent, why is it called Blitz? Well, because the reason why I first wrote SP Blitz was the first one that I ran, because I was sick and tired of people bringing me broken SQL servers and saying, here, this is yours now, Merry Christmas. And I had no idea what kind of filthy, heinous things they'd done to the SQL server. So I wrote this to kind of do a blitzkrieg and take over that SQL server, alert me what the things were that I needed to work on. Marty says, I'm concerned about the performance trade-off of running SP Blitz's code. Have you seen any issues running it under heavy production load? Well, I'll tell you what, with cars, your car will drive faster. It will go quicker if you take the dashboard out. The dashboard weighs a lot. So if you take out the dashboard and those airbags and the speedometer, you will go faster. Now the drawback is you won't know how fast or slow you're going. I don't know about you, but I want to know if I'm in trouble, and the dashboard helps me figure that out. Is there an overhead to using monitoring tools and SP Blitz type stuff? Yes, but you have to find the issues in order to know what the problems are. I'm not one of those people who likes to run SP Blitz every minute or every 15 minutes to a table if I'm not doing something with it. These are troubleshooting tools, not something that you leave continuously up and running. Karthik says, is it a good practice to tune MaxDOP while changing performance or troubleshooting performance issues? No, not live in production, because when you change MaxDOP, it also blows the plan cache, so you find yourself vulnerable to parameter sniffing issues. Just whatever query happens to come in with whatever parameters, presto, you're screwed. All right, so we have a ton of other ones. I'm going to leave the rest of the questions. What I'll do is we'll have the past fundamentals guys send me over the questions in written format, and then I'll take some of them into blog posts. Anything you guys want to add on the DBA fundamental side?
Just a great presentation. Sign up for our next session with Kevin Klein, and also go check out groupbuy.org because they got a lot of sessions coming up Friday.
Absolutely. All right, well, thanks, everybody, and see you next time. Adios.
Thank you, Brent.
You bet.